All right, everybody. I have a website here that I'm going to share with you. It has shielding methods to use. Some of the materials listed here are some of the things that Robert Stanton has used in his shielding, but it goes into a lot of good detail of how to really deal with this. But the problem is, like, it's not going to be 100%, you know, because as well as you finding something that can even immediately block what they're doing, they're going to try to find ways to get through that, understand that. But even with that said, this does block this stuff to a degree to where you are able to actually feel a little bit more at peace than you would without, than you would without. So anyway, let's get right down into the article section of this webpage. By the way, in case you're wondering, I have to play this. It's meant to break off whatever type of systematic structures they're using whenever it comes to these frequencies, such as whatever they're trying to cause different changes of thought. It blocks it off. So just deal with that for now. My apologies for that. But anyway, let's get right into it. The aim here is to provide victims with information that may prevent them from experiencing the same pitfalls as myself and others before them. My recommendations for shielding should not be construed as a solution to stopping all directed energy attacks. What I present here are some materials that can stop some forms of attack outright, but which can only reduce the impact of others. Note, my recommendations here are just opinions and do not constitute a solution for stopping directed energy. If you choose to purchase materials based on information found here, you do so at your own risk. I do not claim that everything on this page is completely correct, for there are many unknowns regarding directed energy. I am merely presenting my opinions based on common knowledge and experiences. The only reason why I'm even presenting this to you all is because it mentions some similar material that a lot of others have used in shielding. But make no mistake and be very, very careful about this. They will give you falsified. They will try to falsify it by making it. And I'm talking about the perpetrators now. They will try to falsify some stuff, trying to make you believe that it works in order for you to pass that information on, and all of a sudden it just doesn't work for others, and that's a way that they get people to actually waste their money. So be mindful of that, right? The thing is, the main point is to find out what works, what is legit, and what is not going to be a waste, and what is something you can basically, that's very versatile that you can use. And even if it gets damaged, you'll also be able to alternate it in a way to where you can use it for another purpose, right? Basically getting more bang for your buck and getting more usefulness out of the material purchased. So let's continue. I'll save you some reading time and tell you what I found works best to stop most of the direct energy attacks in my experience. Materials with high conductivity, high permittivity, and high density. I keep 4 materials on hand. They include silver fabric that's greater than 50% silver, mu metal that's heat hydrogen, annealed 1 to 4 inch steel plating, and 1 to 8 lead sheets. The lead sheet may be the most difficult for the average person to find, and luckily it's the one material that I rarely have to use. The silver fabric and mu metal are equal in that one stops some signals that the other does not. Now the whole sheet thing kind of reminds me of what I did before. I remember SHP made a video of how they actually would use certain paints or a bitch of some sort, and then they would have it coated on the sheet, and then they would use that sheet as shielding, right? What I did was, a while ago, I had started using copper fabric as sheeting. It worked for quite a bit, in fact. I even went out of my way to even make a suit out of it. Unfortunately, that doesn't last for much longer, for very long, because like the fabric starts to wear out over time, and that's the only issue with that. Like, it's got to be something that's more durable, but that's still lightweight that you can wear, but just as effective. I bought the fabric that's supposed to block cell phone signals. It didn't do anything. I've tested it out, and it just didn't work. It's either a placebo, meaning it's fake, but and they're it's like the manufacturer is selling something that's fake, or it's systematically controlled, which is another problematic situation. So anyway, let's continue. Okay, so I read all of it. Lead sheet may be the most. Okay, now I read that. We still click because of the density. And I know that the physics that I study in college may conflict with what I'm about to say, but I have had to use an inch or so of steel plate to stop the effects at each location I've lived at. And this thick plate always has to be applied at my feet, head, or both. That's another thing that I realized. It's either my head that they're doing these attacks to. It's mostly they do a lot of attacks to my abdomen area, like right at the bottom, the base of where the spinal cord is at the very tip. It usually conducts from there around my gut area, and then because I detoxify so much, I could feel whatever they did it was like a shock of electricity that just beamed from there, and it was just going all the way up my spinal cord, and of course that's traveling all the way to the central nervous system, the brain, and all that stuff. Right, that's where it was going. So it made me question about all these other times they kept hitting me in the same area. Right. I know another thing that they'll constantly do is they will attack my legs from time to time. I can sort of feel like where the attacks are coming from, so I'm gonna have to find a way to shield that too. If anybody has any recommendations, I would love to hear it. But in case you're wondering, they use that for an excuse for their verbal harassment. They'll try to tie that in with the other thing and try to pose that off as an excuse as to what's happening. And again, I'm not, like if it's some to give you a prime example, if it's something that's happening directly in front of you, deliberately, and it's made for you to see at its time, it's best just to not play into the narrative of what they're trying to do, because all that is just trying to get you to act out or get you to take action or get you to do something, and then they're going to act off on that to set you up. Don't fall for it. Don't allow their actions to get you to take action that may end up setting yourself up. Let's see where I stopped at. It says, but I have had to use an inch or so of steel plate to stop the effects of each location I've lived at. And this thick plate always has to be applied at my feet, head, or both when lying down to sleep. The thickness has something to do with the power density of the directed energy. What significance does that have? Question mark. I have not researched this question, but off the top of my head, I would think that applying a signal upon a lying body would allow the most eff- efficacy or efficiency. I think that's what he meant. He must have misspelled that. If the signal traveled down the same plane as the central nervous system, I guess I could kind of forgive anybody. Can just forgive that because this is a pretty long article here. Down the same plane as the central nervous system's core conduit. All of the nerves and ganglia branch off this plane, so perhaps you have a broader range of frequencies that can be sent to the branching nerves if you send the signal down the plane of the spinal column. That's just my supposition here. But from my experience, there is definitely a main direct energy that lies in either the direction of my head or toes, wherever I lay my head down to sleep. One of the things I did, I know a lot of people say they use the magnets, but they don't seem to work out. Here's what I did. I had magnets on the front, on the outer side of my ear, and on the back side, right? That's what I did. I also put metal screws on them, and I wasn't able to hear anything of what these perpetrators were doing. When I lay down, I would have magnets going along my spinal cord. I'll lay down on some very powerful magnets, and now that he mentions the stuff about the feet, that kind of ties into what Look Out for Charlie was talking about, because what he was talking about was human body communication, and that had to deal with something with how they were generating energy from the ground to the feet, which leads to the rest of the body, right? So in my hypothesis, what I had figured out was a lot of this geoengineering that they're doing. Of course, it gets in our bodies and our systems and our food and our water, right? But what I had hypothesized is, what if this, and of course, like if it's causing a biofilm to grow on a person's body, right? What if it's the same thing that applies to the ground that we're walking on? Like the ground is like a circuit board, right? And because of a lot of this energy being around, a lot of these frequencies being used, it's like it's sort of, you already know that the Earth has an electrical magnetic field within itself, right? A lot of people know this. What if it's acting off of that for energy, and then it's allowing them to basically connect through that and into us? It's very complicated on trying to figure out how this stuff works, right? But it doesn't mean that people aren't actually finding ways to block this stuff out. It doesn't mean that people aren't finding actual solutions to block this stuff out, or even to just being able to really, really get some relief from now and then. I can't imagine how pissed off they would get if they couldn't even connect to you. I can't imagine how pissed off they would get from something like that, man. Because like just the thought of it, of them flipping out because of that, it just seems hilarious. And of course, going through this mess, you gotta find humor somewhere, man. You got to. You can't allow them to completely have your life and all your days based off nothing but negativity. You can't allow that to happen. Even as much as they've done to me, I can't even allow that to happen. So anyway, let's continue. It says, especially here, but from my experience, there's definitely a main direct energy that lies. Okay, I've created a Faraday cage using these materials, lower half shell. Before I even get into that, just so you know, if you have a Faraday cage or anything like that, do not, and I repeat, do not use any electronic equipment in there. Because what will happen is the electrical magnetic frequencies or whatever this stuff is coming from your device, it's just, it's not going to really have much of anywhere to go, and it's just going to be bouncing everywhere as it's constantly hitting you while it's just trapped in there. So just be very, very careful about that. I've created a Faraday cage using these materials. The lower half shell consists of steel plate, move metal, and drape of 4 to 8 layers of silver fabric. The upper shell is composed of only move metal and silver fabric. This only stops most annoyances that I would experience if I were sitting in the living room unshielded, and it does not stop some signals when I attempt to sleep. I constantly have to move inner layers around and change density. Sometimes this allows good sleep for a week, sometimes only for a night. It really seems to depend on the fortitude or intentions of the perpetrator who's sending the radio signals. I also keep a mini fan available for creating mild vibrations, which drowns out the oscillating or harmonic vibrations effect that seem to be one of the most common attacks to deny my sleep. Keep in mind that directed energy sources could be coming from multiple directions or locations. Having multiple sources has long been a way that the target can be fooled into believing they can't stop an energy flow. For about $150, you can get a Move Metal lab kit from Magnetic Shield Co. that has different types of Move Metal sheets. Each kit has to be split into 2 effective 10 times 16 sheets of stacked metal. I will man, these words. Equilaterally divide each lab kit into 2 sections of equal materials that can be taped together individually to form 2 separate shield plates. And I have spent several $1,000s on this material alone. Just to give you an idea, for about the same cost you could get for 16 times 16 quarter-inch thick steel plates. The silver fabric varies in price depending on the vendor, of which brings me to another problem. I was making this device that's supposed to basically fry the nano network in a person's body as well as their their chips, but the pricing for the materials are actually ridiculous. Copper's gone up, a lot of other metals have gone up, and it doesn't seem like the cost of these things are going down anytime soon. I'm thinking of basically putting a PayPal on the channel. It's, if anybody wants to help out, it's actually it'll help out pretty well, because what I would do is the things that I actually will create with those funds, it helps me out too, by the way. But the things that I'll start creating with those funds is going to be more ways of shielding. I'll just start experimenting with certain materials that I'll be able to get my hands on. And then I'll find other ways to help people out, such as different methods. Of course, the schematics of how to make these things will be made public, and everybody will be able to see it. The only thing is, I'm not 100% sure whether I wanted to do the PayPal thing or not. Just let me know what you all think about that in the comments, because like if I'm getting something to do something, I would want to at least give something back for the most part. Anyway, tape together individually to form two separate shield plates, and I have spent several $1,000s on this material alone. Just to give you an idea, for about the same cost, you could get 4 16x16 quarter-inch steel, thick steel plates. The silver fabric varies in price depending on the vendor. I use between 4 and 8 layers of the fabric. Blue metal and silver fabric can be found on Amazon. I don't even know how much you can even trust Amazon anymore, considering how that is operating. I mean, they've even said people who were working for that industry were involved in this program. The steel plate can be found from a local metal supplier. Yes, I have followed many mil-spec guidelines for Faraday enclosures, and I have also left a few small gaps here and there because of practically, so perhaps I've got it all wrong, and I could have saved a lot of money with a thin sheeted Faraday cage that followed mil specs to the T. But I tried that initially with a fully enclosed 55% silver Faraday cage with 4-inch overlapping seams, and this did not work. The main thing you will want to do with the silver fabric is learn how to tie I don't even know what that word even what that even says. So I guess shamai, or I don't even want to be pronouncing this wrong, but whatever. Head wrap. I recommend you get a 57 to 40 sheet and fold it over a semi-square inch, and then fold it into a semi-triangle as shown in the following video. You'll be amazed how much this helps one to sleep well within an additional Faraday cage, Faraday enclosure. At some point, the energy source could be bumped up in power, requiring more layers of fabric or Faraday material. Now, you see, here's my problem. There's several ways to shield. There's several ways to even disengage these frequencies in a lot of these these synthetic telepathy that they use against us. But what I'm thinking about is there's gotta be, if energy can be directed, can it be deflected? That's what I want to know. A person can throw a baseball a pitcher could throw a baseball, and a batter can use the bat to basically bat the ball away, therefore deflecting it into a different direction away from him or away from her, because of course they got women's league baseball as well. But that's my point. If they can direct energy, is there a way to deflect it? Yes, there's a way to shield from it, but is there a way to deflect it? There must, because think about it. For energy to be directed, it has to be propelled, right? It has to be projected or pushed. So there's got to be another way to push that to push that energy away, or at least deflect it into a different direction. So if they're trying to hit you from a certain point, right? You know how, like, let's say like you create a stream of water. Eventually, it's going from one end, from one pond all the way into actually from one ocean all the way into a pond. But what if you cut off that section that where it's basically using as a method to travel, and you part it elsewhere into a hole, and you basically make a whole nother area there, right, for it to drown into. That's deflecting the water flow into a different direction, and it's collecting in a different area. If things with if physical things can be manipulated like that, and energy could, something energy that you really can't see with the naked eye can be directed as well, Can it be deflected? So anyway, let's go ahead and check out the video here.
Ascend through densities. Ascend through the frequency bands.
If it doesn't play and it starts skip, wait a minute.
Lighter and brighter. Disempower the matrix. The Great Awakening. I get out of this dualistic.
Hey guys, Craig Stewart here with Willow Haven Outdoor. One of the most popular questions I've been getting lately is how do you
I knew that was going to happen.
tie a schmog head wrap? These are used by military forces, mainly in desert regions of the world to keep sand and everything out of their faces. But I use these all the time here in the Midwest.
My apologies for that. You all can. I'm gonna leave the link in the description, and you all can just check that out for yourselves. Anyway, if you stopped reading this page now, you would not miss out on any secrets. The following materials is for information purposes only. They're energies that can circumvent every form of shielding suggested here. For instance, deadly radiation in the form of alpha particles only requires a sheet of paper to stop it, whereas potentially dangerous low-frequency acoustics infrasound may literally require a mountain to dampen its energy. Shielding comes with a caveat. The more you shield, the more advanced and intense the attacks can become. As well, technology evolves, so what may work as shielding today may not work tomorrow. If you live in an apartment style or hotel motel structure, your first act of defense is to move. Mobility helps, and I wish I would have known that from the start, because I was a sitting duck when I was in that apartment before, and it was bad because people were started to tell me like how corrupt that the people who owned that apartment complex. They didn't just own that apartment complex. They owned the Bible college next door. They owned the church across the street, and they owned the LA Louisiana Mall down the street as well. Dude, I started checking out these things, and I kid you not, you'll find it on my other channel. They had low emission equipment popping up all the way from the mall. They didn't have it in the church. I didn't see anything coming from the church, but they had it coming from the mall. They had it coming from the Bible college, and they had it all over the apartment complex. And I ended up going up to the what is that? The landowner, the representative, right? The one who I would pay the rent to. And I asked him about, the camera systems that I was seeing on that app. And I'm like, dude, you told me when I got assaulted that you guys only had one camera and that the camera was just right at the door, right? And he came up with some pompous excuse for that. Like, they're going to deny this kind of stuff if you ask them directly. But, the situation is still the same. Like, it's ridiculous, man. People just act even when it's exposed, man. It's just ridiculous. So anyway, if you live in an apartment style or hotel motel structure, your first act of defense is to move. Mobility helps. The ease at which offenders can access you through a single wall is not going to bode well for you. Move to a detached structure, home, or RV. A location that has the least number of angles of potential attack is best, of course. A home with less neighboring structures is a much better option than one in the middle of a subdivision with homes located in all four sides, because you never know who could rent or buy a home next door. The innermost location of a dwelling may provide the most secure area due to more walls being present between yourself and the offender. Homes with basements are prime. The further you are from the nearest structure, the better. Directed energy sources may include land-based satellite, aircraft, drones, and ionized how do you pronounce that? Ionospheric relay, Gwen, and HARP systems. Land-based assaults can come from equipment located in structures, automobiles, and trailers, or may be in the form of a small signal emitter device that has been covertly hidden in the vicinity of the target. Though I have never seen a directed energy device, it's speculated that some units may take on the appearance or be concealed as some type of home appliance utility devices, stereo, speaker, or amplifier. Hidden signal emitters are small electronic devices that are probably no larger than a cell phone. That's actually good information because at least it's that way it's easier to see or find. Or at least you have some way of an idea, but you know they're gonna probably have that damn thing well hidden. But if it's an emitter, there's got to be a way to find it. There's got to be a way. I remember SHP. She used an app, and it was using. It was like a Bluetooth finder. It would actually, it would actually locate these things. Like a lot of these low emission devices, she was able to find some of the stuff. Don't get me wrong. I don't know how well it works now because I haven't used it in so long, but it's worth a shot. Many so-called DEW attacks are likely not a directed beam or laser, but actually an extremely low-frequency radio broadcast that has been modulated into waveforms that mimic pain, sound, or an actual physiological process of the body. Think of it like an EEG recording of a pain or physiological process that is transmitted and received at the frequency of the target's nervous system operating frequency. For example, sciatic nerve pain could be broadcast as a radio wave signal that are received and interpreted by the brain as a pain in the legs of a victim. Hold up. What did he just say? For example, sciatic nerve pain could be broadcast as a radio wave signals that are received and interpreted by the brain as a pain in the legs of a victim. The victim may believe that the beam is being directed at their legs or torso when in actuality it is being received and processed by the brain. Like a cell phone picking up a radio signal, the ancient... So is that what they're doing when they're effing with my legs? The ancient Leda machine, which elicit relaxing effects, was one of the first forays into manipulating the body through brain-directed radio signals. The technology is much more advanced nowadays. Moon metal with a silver fabric underlining can help against these types of attacks. All the shielding in the world will not help a victim if they do not secure their property. Access to your property will undermine any progress you make. So I strongly advise any victim reading this page to make sure that they check out the tips on the security page as well. At some point in the time, victims may begin a quest to obtain equipment that can be used to detect directed energy. I can save you a lot of headaches and a lot of money with 2 words. Don't bother. See, at some point in the victim may begin a quest to obtain equipment that can be used to detect directed energy. Yeah, I kind of figured that was another thing right there. It says to save you a lot of headaches and a lot of money. 2 words, don't bother. Firstly, the equipment that most people can afford is mostly useless when considering the broad varieties of and frequencies of direct energy that you could potentially witness. Now, that's only true to a degree. One of the things that a lot of people spoken out about, that they used a microphone, and because of it being bone conduction, well, not the microphone, but the stuff that they were using against the targeted individual, they would actually have this microphone in their mouth up against between their teeth cavity, and they would just let it record over time, and they were actually picking stuff up. I've never tried it, but that was just one of the things that was mentioned. At some point in the victim may request equipment that can be used to detect energy. I can save you a lot of headache and a lot of money with 2 words. Don't bother. Firstly, the equipment that most people can't afford is mostly useless, but considering the broad variety of frequencies of direct energy that you could potentially witness. All of those neat little spy gadgets you find online are narrow bandwidth and therefore mostly worthless unless somehow you get lucky with the directed energy miraculously falls into the spectrum of frequencies that the device can actually measure. From 1 hertz to 1 trillion hertz, you're feeling lucky. What are your odds? Equipment that could be used to detect a broad and dynamic spectrum of energy delivers is prohibitively expensive and can even reach into 6 figures worth of money. On top of the cost, there will be knowledge required to effectively utilize such equipment, and this doesn't come overnight. Even those neat little hidden camera detectors are mostly useless against the technology being used by the intelligence community. Again, don't waste time with trying to measure the energy. The attacking source can change medium or modulate out of frequency, and even if you could detect an attack, it won't hold much credibility as evidence. Well, with the situation with the digs, that's a lot different. But I guess I kind of get what he's saying. So we are dealing with a mind-boggling array of energy potentials here in the forms of electrical, magnetic, acoustics, or particles devices that emit radio wave, microwave, millimeter wave, ultrasound, infrasound, ionizing radiation, laser, or plasma energy. As previously noted, a material that is effective at shielding one form of energy may be totally ineffective at shielding another form of energy. This dilemma can be diminished with the stacking or layering of different shielding materials. I have not applied survey techniques in the measurements of shielding materials effectiveness because the measurement equipment I possess does not provide reliable quantitative data. My suggestions are primarily based on the acceptance of nominal conductivity and permeability values for a given material, along with the subject palpable perception. Faraday cages can alternate electromagnetic energy. Steel sheet metal grounded by electrical wire and 50% silver fabric can form the main base of the structure. Blue metal and silicon steel can add at critical areas, head region, to attune low frequencies, which are your biggest enemy. Finally, enveloped in the structure with silver fabric such as 50% argon mesh. Lead sheet or polytungsten sheet is not required, but it is added protection against high frequency ionizing energy and acoustic energy. I no longer recommend copper plate due to its cost, bulk, and lesser efficiency compared to quality 50% silver fabric. Looks like he did use copper, and that also confirms what I've been saying. It does, it does create some layer of shielding, but even that is only to a level and extent. It's just like you said, if you're using something to shield, they're going to amp the stakes of the attacks, right? So that's technically what was happening with the copper sheets that I had. So anyway, recommend copper, but yeah, even copper, like I said, copper is just, it's just going up in price, man. It really is. And what's sad is that, if you're going to make yourself an anti-nano bucket, you're going to need some copper for that. I don't know if you can use steel wire for that. It may be cheaper, but the problem is, like, you better have some cord on there. But I think copper is a lot more, I don't know, like, I know copper has healing properties to it, but there's a reason why it's got to be copper, I suppose. You got to check with, Tony Pontilesco about that, since he is the one who made the anti-nano bucket. Be aware that if there is any gap in the structure wider than an amplitude of a wave transmission, that energy can enter the structure unimpeded. LessEMF.com or Amazon.com likely sell magnetic shielding tape that can seal seams. If you were to create a completely closed system, you could create a ventilation ports, e.g. for small entry and exit fans, with openings concluded or covered with electrically grounded small mesh screen. Baffles to occlude a direct line of entry through the port. As stated above, I tried a 50% silver fabric tent and a few plates of blue metal or silicon steel around the head that fit mil-spec enclosures guidelines, including honeycomb vents, and this did not work for me at all. If acoustics are used, which I tend to doubt, a dense structure would be required using a damper system composed of a thick layer of natural rubber that is sandwiched between many layers of ceramic tile. Depending on your proximity to the nearest source of energy and how much discomfort you can withstand, you may require more or less structure or described above. As described above. In 2020, it is my belief that the best way to get relief from directed energy is by creating more distance between you and the source. And there's a limit to particularly of this for most people. And as a prime example, when I was trying to go off grid, they actually tried a hit and run attempt. Yeah. When I left from the Home Depot, they had the scripted behavior of repetition of guys in trucks. They would constantly ask me if I need a lift, which I denied. Now the reason why I did that is because, well, what even though if they would have dropped me off home, what's stopping them from technically taking off with my stuff that's in the back of the truck, right? So I didn't go for it. I pushed it around 8 or 9 miles. It's like 12 o'clock at night, and they had one thing dealing with the guy who I caught stalking me throughout Baton Rouge for several times. I ignored that, but after that, I found myself having to cross the street. Boom, that's when it happened. The guy missed me, but he was going 80, and he basically chipped the stuff I was hauling. So I suspect that's what they were after, and they didn't want me to leave. I will never forget the amount of desperation that went along with that, man. No way will I ever forget that, because that was me provoking them to take it into the next, into the extremes, because they weren't getting their way. Shielding materials, yes, perpetrators surely reference many information provided here, and yes, I'm giving away my techniques and defenses. Dismiss that. I think it would be selfish to not share my personal findings with others when I believe that it could help others. As well, if what I post here is used by perpetrators to explore or work around, then we can all just consider the counter-truth as in situ providing ground for the materials and techniques presented here. Movement, yes, it is not immaterial, but sometimes it's the only thing you will have. It's free, healthy, and one of the best defenses, but it's not always practical. If you're in a confined space that can't be shielded, such as in a shower, you can sway or shift weight from left to right, which will move the head or torso. Here's the kicker. If you are being sent low-frequency broadcasts directed at the CNS, all you have to do is turn your head out of phase, such as touching an ear to the shoulder or looking straight down at your feet. 90 degrees or so may work. If you're laying prone, then you would raise your head up as to be looking at your feet. It took me a long time before I discovered this, but it works in my case. It works until the signal source is also rotated in phase, or multiple sources at different angles are used. I'm assuming try this and give me feedback if you find that this works for you. Again, this is a temporary fix because the source of the signal can be rotated in multiple angles. Sources at different angles can be used. Now that reminds me of what Volcom Wolverine mentioned, how if you were laying down, you gotta like have your head propped up in a way. So I don't know if he means by laying down and you got your head propped up to where like you can actually see your feet, that would work, but he does say like being able to look down at your feet, and it actually causes interference with what they're doing, I suppose. Moon Metal, this is my go-to shielding material. I recommend this above all other things. I know this material is prohibitively costly, but it will provide you with the relief you're seeking if you use it correctly, and it will save you time and disappointment as they cycle through other costly materials that don't provide the relief you seek. I tell you this to save you all the time and money that I wasted on other materials, namely ceramics and rubber. Depending on skin and depth, shaping, and annealing type, this can be effective against extremely low frequencies, ELF. I suppose that's what I was, that's what I was getting when I had used my air mattress as a shielding, because of the problem was the box spring. So I used that on the mattress in order to basically have it as a way of shielding, so they wouldn't be able to conduct me that way. I don't know if that may have been it, but it's just like he says, if it's one thing doesn't work, they're going to try to find another way. It is ridiculous how desperate they are just to ensure that you're getting tortured by by these frequencies. I can't stress that enough. There was a guy who used plywood to block this stuff off. I think it was the radiation, right? He was using that, and they did something to where like it was either from a laser or something, but they beamed the freaking hole. Are you hearing me? They beamed a freaking hole, burned a freaking hole through the plywood just to get through. Man, talk about some narcissistic, sociopathic individuals, man. Seriously. Let's see. See, time of disappointment as they cycle through the other costly materials that don't provide relief. You seek I tell you this to save you all the time. Yeah, I already read that. And alien, this type can be effective against extremely low ELF. If placed on top of an aluminum or silver fabric that can conduct eddy currents, hydrogen anneal is better than pressure anneal. You shouldn't bend this material because it can disrupt the material bonds, but you can carefully curve it. The company at www.magnetshield.com sells reasonably priced Moo Metal lab sample kits on Amazon.com. These kit sheets should be stacked in the right order, kinetic, netic, and have enough sheets to allow splitting into two separate sets that can be taped together, giving you two shielding plates per kit. You could slightly curve the sheets and tape them together with magnetic shielding tape to make a helmet of sorts. A shimmy style head wrap of English, at least 6 feet of fabric with a Moo Metal helmet on top can reduce eddy currents and can reduce symptoms. Absolutely recommend. So I'm wondering if this is probably Robert Stanton's site or something. I could be wrong though. Either way, if whoever basically made this, I'm doing them a favor by sharing it, spreading awareness. Very effective with EMF. A silver fabric such as a argan mesh can be purchased for the foot. This fabric should be at least 50% silver. It can be a little pricey. It's very effective with moderate RF and microwaves depending on the number of layers. Folds more than 4 or more layers fold over or often required for adequate attention levels. It is extremely versatile, being that it is a fabric. This can be very effective against runaway adrenaline attacks if you drape a couple layers over. I'm wondering if that's what they were doing when they were attacking me before. You see, what they would do is they would try to, I don't know what it was, how they did it, but they would try to raise my aggression levels, and they would have a perpetrator talking to somebody at the same time, and they're just following the script, something to use to aggravate me, right? I would initially just ignore this and move on because I know it's a setup. But let me tell you something. The first time I ignored it, it pissed them off badly. I know it did because of what happened after that. They did it again because I was waiting at a bus stop and I had to stay, wait there. And of course, it's in a public area. So of course, they're going to send a guy out there to basically use the scripted language. And the minute he did that, I just cut the conversation off. The minute he revealed to me what his intentions were, I don't even talk to him anymore because I know exactly why they showed up. I know why they're there, and I'm just not going to engage. It's just that simple. So a couple over the shoulder, like yada yada. Even listen to recommended. Okay, steel plate, steel iron content can affect the magnetic component in electrical magnetic transmissions. The steel carbon can act against the electrical component. It can be pricey and weighty. Absolutely recommended. 14-inch thick lid steel. You know what? I just remembered something. And this came from SHP's channel. I don't know, but it's not something she recommended, but it was someone who she had contact with that recommended this, right? And it was dealing with shielding. It had something to do with a like a pan being put up against the wall of whatever home you're in, and just having it sit there. What was I can't remember too much, but it said it was supposed to like help block off whatever was happening. Don't take my word for this because I have not tried it, and don't think I'm not saying that SHP recommended it. It's just some information that just got passed along. But anyway, let's continue. Steel iron can't, at least I think it may not have been a steel iron plate either. It could have been a cast iron. I can't remember what the type of material it was. So that's why another thing, like I said, is take that with a grain of salt. But anyway, steel iron content can be effective the magnetic component in electrical magnetic transmission. The steel carbon can act against the electrical components and can be pricey and weighty. Absolutely recommended. Lead 1 to 4 inch thick lead sheeting folded into multiple layers are needed. Can provide effective attention, ionizing, and acoustic energies. It is malleable and can be folded with some pressure and cut with a box cutter blade. Lead is a poison and should be handled with caution. The cut corners and edges can be dulled and blunted and then wrapped and duct taped in a garbage or bag containment. This material can get pricey and is very heavy. Additionally, Barre products quality and economical lead aprons that can be very versatile in use. You can obtain lead sheeting through, you find people here, Maycondistries.com. Sheets can be folded over as many times as you need to create more density. Polymer sheets may be viable. Silicon steel, electrical steel, and metal foams. I recently acquired some electrical steel. It is not as effective as Mu metal, but better than regular sheet metal. A non-oriented grain and the thickest gauge is a good, well, all-around option. This material should not be bent, but it can be carefully curved. It is much cheaper than Mu metal, but shipping costs do add significantly to the price. I'm considering this material for a full chamber Faraday cage. Silicone steel is very hard to cut, so you may want to order pre-cut, partially recommended. Rubber. Now this is where either rubber or plastic, I don't think plastic would do anything, but rubber, that's what I need to look into because I have used that before. Rubber bath mats or rubber stepstones paves have proven to be effective as acoustic dampers. Must be natural rubber. 5 or more mats or several paves can be rolled or stacked together and duct taped as a bundle. Several bundles may be needed. Note, just because it's Rubbermaid brand does not mean it is pure rubber. You can create a damper system with this rubber and ceramic tile. If you're wondering, they do sell rubber gym mats that are pretty large in size, but I'm concerned whether that is just like just as he's saying here, if that is real rubber or not. But if it is, you can practically cover a whole dang on wall with that stuff.
Ascend through densities. Ascend through the frequency.
Depending on the size of the place you're in, but that could even get pretty pricey as they're almost $100 a piece. Or depending on the size, it could be around like $50 a piece or 60. Okay, sheet metal 20 to 30 gauge steel sheet with iron content, not stainless steel, can be effective against lower electromagnetic energies when electrically grounded. I would recommend testing the integrity of your electrical ground with a small voltmeter. 20 gauge equals 1 millimeter thickness. 30 gauge equals 0.3 millimeter thickness. Politically recommended. Now, you all can, I'm just going to go up to the copper here, and then I'm just going to go over to the security page. This material can be quite effective at tuning low to moderate electrical components. Sheets of 1/6 thickness can be cut in the size of your ceramic tiles. Grounding with this alligator clips and air wiring helps. Amazon has a ground plugs. Required depth may vary. This can be bulky and pricey. This material can be an added defense against electronic snooping or eavesdropping. I've downgraded my recommendation for copper and would recommend a sheet metal or silver fabric combo with this material. Partially recommended. Alright, let's go into the security area here, if you can find it. Let's take another look at this just so you can see an example. Alright. Now let's go to here. It's time here. Looks like we're hitting 49 minutes, almost to an hour. The security requirements for targeted individuals are quite different from that of the average person. One is likely dealing with offenders whose resources span law enforcement, military, and intelligence agency types. If a surreptitious entry is in order, there's not much you can do to prevent it. Therefore, your security should be geared more towards detection and evidence of physical tampering rather than that of entry prevention. So the advice given here is not really aimed at deterring a conventional burglar, but is aimed at detecting a surreptitious burglary. Both conventionally and alternately security measures are discussed below. The crux of the organized surveillance company campaigns is to maintain an undetectable state. This means that breaking entry is a no-go unless they can remove the breaking aspect, and then it's a go. So the key point I will stress here is that you should set up a security in a fashion that will show physical evidence if any tampering has occurred. If there's physical evidence, then there's a crime, and where there's a crime, there becomes a record, and a record is a cardinal sin for those offenders, for them. It's all about going undetected. With that said, some of the things I'll present are quite simple and low-tech, actually ancient in some aspects. Now, before I even show any of that, there was one T.I. and his family, what they created a way. If anybody was going through the window, if anybody was going through the door, they were going to have to leave a footprint, as a result, which means they left powder on the floor on the inside. In order for you to get in there, you're gonna have to leave a footprint, right? And if none of the people there own any of those kinds of shoes, then that tells you a lot. And even if it is any kind of shoe, what about the size? Not to mention, what about the filming of the actual said thing, showing that there is no prints, but when they get there, there is a print, but everybody's gone and everybody left. So you see where that's getting at, right? The only person who could have left the print is someone who doesn't live there. First, I'm going to present some conventional security information, much of which is fairly obvious. More of the same is not necessarily better. Diversified two locks on a door, all of the same style, may be defeated by a similar attack. Two different styles of lock requires two different modes of attack. Some non-branded Chinese-made security products could plausibly provide better security than a big name. Common product by way of being novel and obscure, and they're presenting more hoops for offender to hop through. When trying to find schematics, code keys, or additional information that might allow them to circumvent the security device. One of the concerning things about this is like the one of those digital devices that closes a door. You see, that can be hacked into. I think it's like the frequency signal that thing emits can be pre-recorded and therefore, copied and then replayed for an offender to gain access. So electronic locks are very, I wouldn't go for that. If I were anybody else, I wouldn't, just because of that vulnerability being a possibility. Okay, so by way of being novel and obscure, they're presenting more hoops for an offender to hop through when trying to find schematics, code keys, or additional information that might allow them to circumvent the security device. This would present being a beneficial instance of something being lost in translation. The more diverse your security arrangement is, the less likely it is to be wholly defeated. Even if the offender is so adept that they can detect and defeat everything you throw at them, you may rest assured that you will have at least slowed them down and maybe even prevented them from carrying out their full objective. The most advanced security technologies can't replace having feet on the ground, human or canine. I believe that there are four primary reasons for the surreptitious agent entries into a target's home. Survey and observe what's going on in your home. Surveillance setup, psyops effects, and food, water, and chemical tampering. As a targeted individual, your security options are limited, though this should not be precluded you from taking other recommended security measures, because of all of us are still susceptible to the common burglary. The following items may be more applicable to those who are targeted. High-end locks. I'd recommend a key lock and a padlock for your door's exterior. These locks should cost a few $100 or more. Research them beforehand. Updated. I don't just recommend this. This is a must. At a minimum, buy a highly rated lock off Amazon. Concealed cameras use multi. You see, this is one of the other things I was thinking, because you see, if you got a camera out and you're walking out and about, like out in the open, they'll be on the lookout for whenever you're turning it off and turning it on. So when you're turning the camera off, they're just gonna act out whatever it was that they had pre-scripted. But if you have a camera that cannot be seen and it's very difficult for them to tell whether it's on or off, then the people who they send towards you run more of a risk of being recorded and having unknowingly everything documented, and then you can just showcase that on your channel or whatever, or have that as proof. Concealed cameras use multiple concealed or hidden cameras throughout your domicile. At the earliest hint that you are being surveilled, it would be the best if you provided the funds, details for an acquaintance to purchase and discreetly deliver these items to your person. These should be discreetly and quickly positioned and installed. At some point, the offenders may surreptitiously set up surveillance around or within your home. Detecting this new age technology is virtually impossible unless you're incredibly lucky or spend good money for a professional survey. Low-tech goodies. Sometimes you may just want to know if someone entered or traveled in your area, traversed an area. I won't give away my personal techniques, but I will seed your imagination with a couple examples. Use invisible fluorescent dust on steps or handles. Loosely place a low-laying hair wire and microfiber across a walkway or doorway. A passerby will unknowingly dislodge the fiber from its anchors. Be creative and practical. Novel and unconventional techniques are great ways to defeat conventionally trained types who think they're God. Wax seal. This is an ancient, tried and true method. In place of wax, use plastic dip or great stuff foam on pads, locks, or seams of doors, windows, or containers, especially containers with security cameras. Recorder. Note that unless you have a high-end padlock, it could be shimmed and opened with any sign of tampering, so you will also want to cover the area where the U-bolts enter into the lock. You can and may want to put a small piece of tape over the keyhole before dipping a padlock into plasti dip. Great stuff. You may want to tape off all of the surface areas that will contact the foam, for it is hard to remove when cured. This material should be embellished with other embedded materials, security tape, string, labels, markings, fingerprints, imprints, or other uniquely identifying materials, so that it cannot be removed and replaced with a replica of your original stamp, coding, design. Be practical and creative here. The point here is the detection of tampering. This method is only as good as uniquenesses and the inability to reproduce your original stamp coding. If you leave this page with anything to heed, it should be this advised is at a minimum. Single entry rate. Only one door should be accessible with a key from the home exterior, and this door should be very visible to neighbors and the public. This door should be brightly lighted consistently each evening, preferably with battery backup, so that it will be potentially for quick interest from neighbors in the event that the light is tampered with or turn off at night. Place some type of eye-catching item, i.e. a really small, non-annoying strobe light in the vicinity of this door when you are away from home. This will continually attract attention and occasionally glances from neighboring and passing eyes. Now, that's probably for the people who are like not in the know and not involved, or who are being lied to, right? Post discreet and classy reward sign somewhere on your property for the capture and persecution of anyone found tampering with or attempting to burglarize your property. This post will sit in the back memory of neighbors and those who have observed it, and will subconsciously draw more of their attention and glances to this area on a daily basis. Trash. Don't discard your trash within a container bag, or empty your trash in free form, allowing it to mix in with other refuse. The following material is more, don't discard your trash within a contained bag. Empty your trash in free form. Oh, I get it. Because they can't blend it in with something else. That's why. The following material is more conventional in aspect and doesn't particularly benefit targeted individuals. Parameter. If you live in a popular neighborhood, the offender may attempt to may attempt entry at the least conspicuous location, which could simply be the front door or the garage. One technique can be used by offenders to have a large vehicle such as a trailer or a van parked in front of your property in order to obscure your neighbor's line of sight. Look around your property and determine which areas you would choose to enter if you were a burglar. After determining these locations and place some obstacles. If you live in a rural location, you would need more strategic deterrence. Rural locations are actually more vulnerable because once you are away from the property, the criminals can move into action and spend as much time as necessary to attack your property without the fear of being spotted. Doors hinges should not be exposed to exterior. Doors should be windowless. The strongest door and lock on the world is only as secure as the frame and jamb that envelops it. I recommend the use of both high-end key locks and high-end padlocks. For your door's exterior along with the interior side only key deadbolts. No knowledge on how to defeat these high-end locks eventually evolves. So the same models that are esteemed at the time of this writing may be irrelevant tomorrow. Regardless, their cost will start at several $100s a piece. This will be the best physical deterrent that can be recommended. Home alarm system. These will be defeated, but I will mention them on the premises of detecting conventional burglars. Wireless systems may seem high-tech and cool, but they can be defeated via frequency jammers. Hardwired units with a backup uninterrupted power supply is preferable when using keypads or combinations. Use confusing dummy sequences while only truly depressing in the actual combination code keys. Heat signatures can be read on the touch keys with IR, and the unique frequencies of the individual's keys can be sniffed out with the remote RF scanners. And agent mesh shielding could be exploited in these situations. Infrared and wireless sensors can be jammed. Laser acoustics and compressors of the fabric. Optic sensors may be better alternative. Windows. Keep blinds drawn when away from home. Install a screw or stick into your window jambs to prevent the window from being slid open, even if the glass is broken. Use security film, laminated or reinforced glass. Hardwire sensors are preferable to that of wireless. Be prepared for a plan of action in the event of a fire. Lighting. Motion lighting may be beneficial, but note that infrared sensors can be jammed. Hardwired light out of reach is recommended in obscure areas of the home's perimeter. Timed indoor lighting systems may fool a common criminal, but for the target individual, it is pointless because they always know whether you're home. Cameras. Hardwired cameras should be placed at an exterior corner location to allow the video of the capturing of all angles. The wires of the camera should be protected with flexible conduit or pipe, which can be found at the home improvement store. They should be capture areas of main entryways as well as obscure locations that neighbors can't see. Infrared LED beam cameras reduce the need for additional exterior night lighting. LED cameras cannot be used from behind a window or protective covering due to the inflection glare. Wireless cameras are susceptible to signal jammers. Connect cameras to a DVR hardwired computer that can either store the footage or relay the footage over the interior or to the smartphone. Utilize dummy cameras along with real cameras. Use concealed or hidden cameras. Utilize a wild game hunter or a nanny motion camera. Ensure that the recording equipment is concealed or placed within a locked space that would show evidence if tampered with. Booby traps. Illegal? Yes, they are illegal. Of course, if you insist on breaking the law, you may have to let a jury decide whether the real criminal is yourself or the burglary pig who lost his eyes from an attenuated 12-gauge bird-shot tripwire. Oh yeah, it's still legal. Yes, it's still illegal even though you posted a sign on the front door that said beware of booby traps. Automobile car alarms may only be a small annoyance as someone with skills. One of those strobe lights and siren combo units that locks into a steering wheel may be more effective due to its nobility. Use a manual key instead of a remote key when possible to lower the risk of an offender cloning your remote signal key. Unless you know and trust an automotive professional who will help you out, you should not even waste your time searching for a GPS tracking units installed on your car. There are they are really small now, and their signals may be pulsed and difficult to detect or static until movement is detected. Some GPS units stay in sleep mode until they are called by the offender to wake up and transmit coordinates. There are some reasonably priced dash or mirror cameras available on Amazon that may be useful in cataloging incidents involving offenders out on the street. Watch for tampering with your tires or wheel bolts. Watch for the dripping fluid from underneath the vehicle. If I worked for DARPA, one of the intelligence agencies, I would have already created a small transmitter smaller than a cell phone, which could emit radio signals that could elicit effects such as a nausea, headache, or drowsiness. The Elita machine did this decades ago, although with pleasing effects, so you can imagine what current technology can do. This device can be concealed near any place that a target would sit, and it could be remotely activated via phone, etc. With all its possible implements. Do you think its capability doesn't already exist? Information technology, computers protecting your information and activity on a computer is increasingly difficult endeavor. But regardless, you should still attempt to harden your system security. Use an Ethernet landline when possible and keep it disconnected as much as possible. Air gapping. Use open air source software applications. Verify your software with checksums or hashes. The only people who really know if a proprietary application has a backdoor are the feds, and the application's authors use keyboard and hard drives encryption software. Use a robust ubiquitous antivirus program. Use a robust firewall. Use a virtual sandbox application. Utilize virtual operating systems when performing risky or private tasks, e.g. Tails. Use proxy chaining or at least just a simple proxy. Use encryption software, TrueCrypt. Use encryption email services. Spoof MAC addresses. Use privacy browsers, Tor. Use encrypted SMMs, MMS. Texting periodically. Review system security event logs. Download material on a separate computer and scan transfers to your own. Applications that are relevant today may be dangerous tomorrow. So research the right applications for your needs. Never do anything nefarious while utilizing privacy concealing techniques, because it will only bring into question all of the instances of legitimate usage. Phones. When urgently privacy is needed, remove your phone's battery. Place a small piece of electrical tape over front-facing cameras. Jailbreak or rooted phones may afford better security for those who know what they're doing. Install a good and you see, I knew about that, and that's why I do use electrical tape. You see that he does, he's not, it's not saying just regular tape. He's saying the electrical tape. For those who know what they're doing, install a good antivirus and firewall program which only allows exiting data from applications that you trust. Use an encrypted texting application. You can find many of the same privacy options for your phone as are listed for the computer above. Beware that your device, computer, or phone can be tapped into remotely by RF sniffers. The keys you press in images on your screen all emit unique frequencies that can be scanned remotely and reconfigured into a character or image on the offender's system. This is not conspiracy. This is the simple science behind real technology available to intelligence personnel. Using something like argon mesh may tune out the signals your device emits when it is draped over your device. The self. Be prepared to protect yourself should you ever encounter a threat to your self-well-being. The best defense is to talk yourself out of the situation, such as I have successfully done for the past 25 years. Self-defense courses could be beneficial in showing one how to exploit body pressure points by the use of strikes and holds. Weapons can be grouped into three basic category types through cutting, force, blunt force, and projectile force. Blades, clubs, and guns. All three of these categories can comprise lethal and non-lethal effects. I would recommend that everyone have at least one non-lethal and one lethal tool at their disposal. I would recommend the following items to meet the needs of every category. Pepper spray, non-lethal pepper spray in a compact canister can be used by anyone and can be effective against man or beast. Spend a little extra money for a quality multi-shot product. Telescopic collapsible baton, non-lethal means of physical defending yourself around your property. This is recommended over a baseball bat, which can be extremely lethal. Blade, lethal blade to protect yourself in the event you can not access firearms. I personally recommend something like the Cold Steel Gladius Machete and firearms. Lethal means of self-defense. A quality revolver and shotgun make good home defenses. Firearms when away from home, or quality pistols in the best option. I would recommend a good gun, safe bolted to the wall and floor, along with added weights in the bottom of the place in tight spaces. That's preferably behind false wall or hidden room. A tip that I'll leave you with is that if you are ever traveling or in need of a place to secure your firearm away from home, find and use a pawn shop. Yes, use a pawn shop to temporarily secure and hold your firearm. Just make sure that you are pawning it and not selling it before you sign your name. Don't waste money on electrical guns, either blunt or projectile, because they rely on power sources and they require close proximity. If you have a steering wheel lock in your car, it can double as a blunt force club. Lastly, there's one weapon you can't carry with you everywhere: your belt and buckle. A heavy and solid belt buckle clasp, or a loop buckle that could accept something hooked or a clasp onto it. For example, a heavy keychain or ring of keys can be swung with force. Just be aware that if you miss your target, the buckle end is swinging back in your direction. The last thing I want to convey here is that while taking security measures can be beneficial, no amount of precautionary measures are totally foolproof. So shed all false sense of security and be prepared to cope if your privacy and property are violated. Oh man, that's freaking Uncle Sam right there. Well, I hope this was very informative for all of you. I hope this helps. And with that out of the way, once again, you'll find a link in the description. Take care, stay safe out there, and as always, stay strong.